Well, now we're going to hear from David O'Gorman. And let me tell you a little bit about David. Train Technologies is an engineering business at the forefront of meeting the challenges of climate change. We know from them, the industry, they are the leading industry brands, Thermo King and Frigoblock. I hope I've said that correctly. And through these and other solutions, they're finding ways to keep the products safe, people cool, and also reduce the environmental impact of the equipment needed to do it. So David brings nearly 30 years of experience of this industry. He's going to talk to us about how Train and the wider vehicle equipment industry is going to support the industry as it meets those changing needs and expectations of both consumers and, of course, regulators. So please give a very warm welcome to the Commercial Director, Western and Northern Europe, Train Technologies, David O'Gorman.
What I want to do this afternoon, and I know we're slightly behind time, Tom, is to share with you some insights and thoughts that we as Thermo King and Train have on what's happening in the industry, with a focus around government policy, not necessarily picking apart the government policy, but in general how it's impacting us, looking at lower GWP for transport refrigeration, and then talking about diesel-free transport refrigeration and where we are in that journey today. So when we talk about government policy, I think one of the big things that impacted us, our most recent ones at the end of 2018, 2019, was the NRMM legislation, when there had to be a modification to engines to reduce the emissions from the engines. We took that on board, as did everybody else in the industry, and we are now fully compliant with the legislation. That was influenced in somewhat in the UK by some TRU testing that had happened on diesel refrigeration units here in the UK. And through working with Tom, we know there's more testing of this coming up, and we will be involved in that because we want the government and others to be able to make informed decision on valid testing based on real criteria, rather than, as Tom has alluded before, people have ideas about what refrigeration systems do and how they work and what people do with them. And the perception is not always reality. And we as Thermo King learned a lot about that on a journey I was on that started 7 years ago, looking at what your drivers do with your refrigeration units. And we started by looking at 100 units in Europe, and we now monitor over 70,000 units across the world. So we know how many hours they run per day, when they start, when they stop, how much fuel they burn. Now we are possessing a lot of valuable information that can help us and others make informed decisions. So that TRU testing is coming. It may or may not impact government policy, but we want to be sure we assist in helping to make informed decisions. I prefer to call it the red herring debate rather than the red diesel debate. A question came up in an earlier policy regarding the impact of removal of the tax exemption on red diesel, and did that push people further towards investigating alternate fuels and power sources. I honestly believe, and I said it earlier as well, the government removed the tax rebate to fund the coffers of the government, not to help the industry, because in other countries in Europe, and we've shared this information with the Cold Chain Federation, in other countries within Europe, they are giving subsidies to transport companies who invest in technology. None of the tax that was taken back from you in this room has been given back to you to help you fund investment in new technology or to purchase new equipment that will cost more money. Technology does not come cheap, and we're all becoming acutely aware of that as time goes by. But red diesel is not reducing our emissions. Moving from red to white will have no impact on our emissions. It's the exact same diesel. It's just a different form of generating revenue for and tax for the government. But what it has done, it has forced manufacturers of equipment like ourselves to become more efficient in how we use that diesel. And we heard from one or two fleets earlier today about how they are seeing savings in new equipment in the volume of diesel that they burn. So from that perspective, it has pushed us down that road, and we are now much more efficient in how we use the diesel that is being consumed by transport refrigeration units. And I think if we look at the NRMM, the TRU testing and the red diesel, I honestly believe the industry is going to lead the government here. We want to drive the change. We are ready with the change, and we are more than willing to help move the industry along for the better, not to be dictated to by somebody from London. And finally, the F-gas activities. And I think we're transport refrigeration is in a kind of a unique situation because we're mobile refrigeration, we're not static refrigeration. And while you have to comply with the F-gas regulations, the usage of refrigerants is not as strict as it is in other forms of refrigeration. But having said that, I want to share something with you on the roadmap for refrigerants, which is underway. Many manufacturers are well down this road, and I want to share some of that as we move forward. If we look at the refrigerants, as part of a study by somebody somewhere in the world, a number was created. There's over 1 million refrigerated vehicles on the road with a diesel engine. Is it 900,000? Is it 1.5 million? Who knows? But 1 million is a round number. And when we look at that, all of these units contain a charge of refrigerant. And in the past, for those of you that have been in the industry as long as me, you remember refrigerant R12 and the magic juice R11, and then we had 134A, 502, 404A. All of these became increasingly environmentally friendly, but came with their own challenges around pressures and operating parameters. So how do you actually improve the environment by when you are using these refrigerants? And if you notice on the very first slide in my presentation, there was a nice green background. Did everybody have a nice summer in the UK? Felt nice and warm? That's because of refrigerants and emissions. And there's another country not a million miles away from here, Pakistan. A third of the country is underwater. This is because of what we have done as a society for the last number of years. Climate change is no longer a discussion. It's a fact, and it's here, and we have all seen it in the last number of weeks and months. I was speaking to Valerie from France earlier. They have had no rainfall effectively for almost a year in a part of France. We have wildfires in London. I flew over a part of Dublin on Monday morning this week, and outside Dublin I saw fire breaks ploughed into fields around Corn because they're afraid of wildfires. So it's here, and this is one of the driving factors behind it, this and the emissions that we get from diesel. So make no mistake, we, Thermik Train, we are committed to trying to avert that catastrophe for our children. So when we talk about refrigerants, what have we done? And historically, we've changed the type of refrigerant. We've introduced newer technology to reduce the refrigerant charge through microchannel coils. We've reduced the charge. We moved to R452A and R410A, which have lower GWP ratings, around 2,400. Train as a company launched a gigaton challenge a few years back, and we want to reduce the carbon emissions for our customers by 1 gigaton by 2030. And just to put that into perspective, a gigaton is the same amount of emissions that are annually put out by UK, France, and I think it's Germany or Italy. I have a slide later. So we as a company want to reduce the global emissions by the same factor as those three countries. And we do it through refrigerant change, energy usage, and I didn't say diesel, I said energy usage because diesel is a thing of the past. And we want to make that change effective throughout the world. We've introduced energy efficient marine units. We can reduce the cost of power for a marine unit on a seagoing journey by $50 for a trip. Well, $50 doesn't sound a whole lot, but if you've got 1,000 of these containers on a boat, that's a lot less fuel that you burn on the boat and a lot less emissions. So it's starting, and that's part of the supply chain that many of us here won't see. We're launching a bus air conditioning solution that utilizes CO2, natural refrigerant. And then as we move forward and look at our transport side, we will be introducing low or ultra-low GWP refrigerants in the marine space, the bus space, and then also moving into the truck, trailer and small truck space. One of the challenges that we as an industry will face is when we look at these new refrigerants, because of the volume of refrigerant that transport refrigeration units use, there are no regulations about how to use it. There are no government guidelines around safety, around having detection devices in the event of a leak. So we're making change happen before we know what the legislation is going to be, and we're trying to second guess and prepare for what the governments in Europe and around the world are going to say you have to do, because we don't want to wait until somebody tells us this is what we need. We want to have the solution, and then if we have to make some modifications, it's a lot easier. But we want to be a step ahead of regulation before it comes. And I think that's the thread that I want to share, is that we are not waiting for somebody to tell us you will have to change X by Y date. We want to be ahead of that, and we want to have our customers with solutions well in advance. So as I mentioned, a gigaton of CO2 equivalent is the same as the emissions from Italy, France and the UK. So we want to reduce effectively the emissions of those three countries every year. And that's just our company. If many more companies sign up to this, large corporations, imagine what we can do to help our future summers and our children's future summers. I won't really dwell on this. It's just a graphic to show you about the future of where you can get power for a refrigeration unit without having a diesel engine. You can get it from a battery, you can take it from the truck engine, you can use inverters, alternators, etc., but you can power refrigeration systems without a diesel engine. And you can do all of this today. So when we talk about the future of transport refrigeration without diesel, it's not the future, it's now. So if you look at this slide here, to the right hand side you'll see electric delivery vans with electric refrigeration units and not a whiff of diesel in sight. That can happen, that is here, that is now, it's growing at a very rapid pace of knots in the UK. If you look to the left hand side, a larger distribution truck with a diesel engine or a CNG engine, but the refrigeration unit does not have a diesel engine. It's direct driven from the engine of the truck. So there's an auxiliary engine that we have removed from that customer's fleet. And that's not just in the UK, that's in UK, Ireland, in all the region that I look after, Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden. It's happening everywhere. So there are direct drive refrigeration units that can replace the vast majority of diesel powered refrigeration units today, available on the market today. That's not to say they meet every customer's requirements right now because of various operational criteria, but the solutions are available. And again, the future is here, is now, it's happening today. These are all electric chassis. We have Electra, we have DAF, Volvo, MAN, Mercedes. All of these electric chassis are on the road in Europe and the UK. They all have electrically powered transport refrigeration units. Those electric transport refrigeration units can be installed and have been installed for many, many years in the UK on diesel chassis. So when we talk about the future of a diesel-free transport refrigeration future, it's not the future, it's now, and it has been here for quite a number of years. So make no mistake, we are ready. It's a question of can the industry move along with us. These are all the trucks. In the last talk we had, we spoke a lot about trailers because we had Gist at the meeting and another customer. So electric trailers are available, and they're not new. We've had electric trailers for a long time as well. It's just that certain customers, electric trailers meet their criteria. Many customers, they haven't done until now. So if you look at this image here, we have a co-op in Switzerland on the left-hand side. They're running electric trailers in Switzerland. Just on the top left-hand side, we've got in the Netherlands battery-powered refrigeration systems. Top right-hand side is a hybrid system which has a diesel engine on the refrigeration system, but also takes power from an engine-mounted generator on the tractor. So the solutions are there, and I think in the future there is not going to be a one-hat-fits-all for a solution, because diesel TRUs have been very, very accommodating for all different types of operations. As we move and look at the criteria and the restrictions about alternate power sources, whether it be HVO, fuel cell, solar panel, batteries, hydrogen, etc., there's not going to be a single solution that will meet everybody's requirements in this room. So it's going to be an evolution. And as we progress, we are working on having as many of those solutions available as possible. By the end of 2025, we will have electric solutions across all of our portfolio, and independent electric solutions. And our long-term goal is to have a fairly major percentage of our portfolio to be electric only by 2030. So we are already there. We have the technology, and now we have to work with yourselves and with governments to make sure that the technology can be implemented and the infrastructure, more importantly, can be made available within the RDCs, at the motorway service stations for charging, etc. And a comment that came up earlier was around training for technicians from Tom. One challenge that we have within the industry is training technicians anyway, never mind the fact that we have to train older technicians because the age profile of the technician base is going up. It's harder and harder to get young people in. So this may be a way to bring younger people in because of the new technology. So that's another challenge that both us as a manufacturer and yourselves will face. And when we look even further into the future, this is a project that we're actively working on at the moment. This is an autonomous electric ferry that carries electric-only refrigerated trailers that are moved around the port by autonomous electric tuggies, and they get dropped at the port by a hybrid diesel-electric chassis. And a customer in Scandinavia is investing in this so they can cut their journey times and reduce their overall fleet emissions by a factor of XXX%. So this is happening a ferry ride away from the UK. It can happen here. It will happen here. It's just a question of how fast we can move down that journey. Tom mentioned that in one of his slides about in his green pillar. I just saw the green pillar and the phrase greenwashing sprung to mind very quickly. There are companies in the UK who need to portray a green image. There are other companies in the UK who have green at their core, and whether people think it's good, bad or indifferent, they will do what they're doing and they will continue to do what they do. And I think it's the companies who are taking a step into the environmentally friendly transport distribution are the ones who are going to make the biggest effect as well, because the volume will be there behind them.